Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. I'm Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and I did this podcast 2 minutes ago.
Oh man, how did it go?
Well, as long as I don't see myself doing it again, we'll be fine.
That's perfect. No time paradoxes here in this episode of this podcast where we do travel back in time to past years of cinema.
One might say we're going to go back in time.
Yes, we are. So we're here at the beginning of our new season, although we kind of started it early last season with a Christmas special, but we're here officially at the beginning of our season on the films of 1985 to talk about the box office champion, which is Back to the Future. And this is the second time I think we actually asked our wonderful producer, Dave Rosen, to pick the year for this season. So, Dave, what was it about 1985 that you wanted us to look into?
Was it the song?
Well, yeah, absolutely. No, first of all, the movie I have picked for my pick, I am very excited to talk about with you guys, which we'll get to later in the season. But also, as I was just looking at the year, I was like, Back to the Future, how could we not talk about Back to the Future? And like some of these other movies we're going to be getting to, they're just some of the best of the 80s. And I know I did 1980 last time, and I would have gone into another decade, but still, I was so excited for this particular year. I think almost everything we're talking about is like just a straight up classic.
I think your pick last time was 2000, but we did do a season on 1980. So
didn't I do 1980?
I mean, we did it. Maybe you suggested and we agreed, but I think
I picked 1980. Oh,
yeah, the last time.
Whatever the zeros ending years you've picked, Dave, good job. But
yeah, good.
I do agree with Dave. Like we're right in the middle, of that kind of blockbuster era. We've done 1984 and talked about that, and you'll see right from the beginning, you're getting like really cool movies that I think a lot of people may have tried to recapture the tones of, but have not been able to get since this time period.
Yeah, I feel like maybe this is, I don't know if it's the peak, but this is definitely a very 80s year of the 80s. I think this happens a lot with decades where they have a certain pop culture stereotype, but it really only applies to like part of the decade. And when we talked about 1980, and I'm sure we mentioned this, like 1980 is really the 70s.
Yeah, it's still new Hollywood is really, and everything.
Yeah, is really kind of what we think of as the 70s. And so by 1985, and I'm sure also 1984, I'm sure we mentioned this in that season as well, we've really gotten into the mode of what people think of as pop culture from the 80s. And Back to the Future is like, that is like peak 80s pop culture. I feel like even people who are much younger, who were born later, didn't experience any of this, you ask them about 80s pop culture, they would think of Back to the Future.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a real juggernaut in that 80s merchandising way that, Spielberg mastered, and he's an exec producer on this thing. And, every possible ancillary income, avenue that there was, like they've taken. I think we've all probably ridden the ride, right? Like the Back to the Future ride back in the day. That was a fun simulator.
I believe
right?
so. Yeah, at Universal Studios, right? Which didn't even open, I think, until like a decade or more later. And that's how lengthy and extended the footprint of this film was. But yeah, I mean, this is a movie, and we've talked about things like Star Wars, but this movie was heavily merchandised and sold. And I think as kids growing up, I mean, at least for me, I feel like the ancillary products related to this movie were probably things that I was exposed to before the movie itself, although I did watch the movie as a kid multiple times. But it was just this entity that was out there, like Star Wars or other big franchise properties that were huge deals at this time.
Everything is a big franchise in the 80s, the commoditization. It's interesting, like, you ever hear Tarantino talk about how like he thinks this and the 50s are the two worst decades of film? And you know how I feel about the 50s from our experimentation, Not to say there aren't great movies in the 50s, because they're definitely on. So, but I love the movies of the 80s. Is that because that's when we were growing up, or is it because they captured like a real kind of fun spirit? As we're recording, it's right before Valentine's Day, and they're going to put Pretty in Pink back in the theater. And I'm trying to take Scarlett to my daughter to go see it. I've already taken her to see E.T. and The Last Dragon. Like, the 80s are fun, man. The 80s are fun.
Yeah, I'm leaning more toward Tarantino.
But you hate fun, so let's be honest.
I feel like this is the era when like soulless blockbusters like grabbed hold of Hollywood and never let go. And not that Back to the Future is soulless. I'm mixed on it, but there are a lot, and you know, or E.T. or whatever. Like, there are a lot of good movies, just like there are a lot of good movies in the 50s. But I think the overall sense of where cinema was, or especially where Hollywood mainstream cinema was, is not the best.
Well, that's fair, but I do want to clarify one thing, because you're saying soulless blockbusters. I think they were still trying to make cool blockbusters, and then when it became like the IP boom of the early 2000s, that's where we lost our soul, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, that was bad also. And a lot of what we're stuck with right now is just recycling things that are from the 80s, unfortunately. And so it feels like we haven't left in a way. But I mean, we'll see as this season progresses. I think there's a lot of good stuff here. And some of it is mainstream Hollywood stuff and some of it is not. And that's always the full picture. You know, I think as we always say on here about every year being an awesome movie year, like, it's not just what was Hollywood doing? What were the studios doing? There's independent films. There's world cinema, there's documentary, there's a whole range of stuff. And to say that it's a terrible decade excludes that, I think, you know, so that's not really fair either. Well, I said I was leaning toward agreeing with him, and certainly from a Hollywood studio standpoint, which my guess is what he's referring to. But there's certainly far more going on than just.
I mean, this is a whole other episode, because I would argue like the best modern action movies were made in the 80s and this and that. But there's no point in doing that, Josh, because we have to talk about a movie that took place in 1985 in 2026. So in a way, we're going back to the future for this episode.
Mm-hmm. Right. And this movie was, again, as we said, it's the box office champion. The number one movie at the box office this year was a massive hit. It grossed $381.1 million worldwide in its original release on its budget of just $19 million. And it's made more money on re-releases. This is a movie, it was just re-released in theaters, I think, a few weeks ago, as we're recording this for a 40th anniversary, even though it's like the 41st anniversary. But it did have an extensive theatrical re-release again. And this is a movie that director Robert Zemeckis and his co-writer Bob Gale had been trying to get made since 1980. And thanks to the success of Romancing the Stone that Zemeckis directed, he was able to finally get this off the ground with Steven Spielberg as the executive producer, as you mentioned. It was nominated for 4 Oscars, which is not necessarily something you expect from a movie like this, including Best Original Screenplay, Best Sound, and Best Original Song for The Power of Love, the Huey Lewis and the News song. And it won for Best Sound Effects Editing. It also was nominated at the Golden Globes for Best Picture, Musical or Comedy, Best Actor in Musical or Comedy for Michael J. Fox, Best Original Song and Screenplay. And one of the fascinating things, Jason, I'm sure you want to talk about, because you always talk about alternate casting, not only casting, but this movie was shot for, I think, 6 weeks with Eric Stoltz as the star before he was replaced. And I hope someday we get to see more footage of that.
Or Eric Stoltz. So,
yeah.
So going back, Josh, to the beginning of your information-filled block of dialogue there. Today, Josh, that would be a $57,233,438.66 budget to make a movie that in return grossed $1 billion, $198,889,925 and 65 cents. So pretty good return on investment there. The Stoltz thing was hard because Michael J. Fox was the guy they wanted from the beginning, and you know the Family Ties executive producers didn't even give him the script at that point in time. And this guy, Michael J. Fox, you know, was he like 24, 25 at the time? He won like 3 Emmys in a row for Family Ties, I think, starting in this year, and then Back to the Future. I mean, I don't know if there was a bigger star pop culturally. He wasn't the biggest movie star in the world, but overall encompassing pop culture, like household name all the way.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm sure that's part of why they wanted him, not only because they thought he was right for the part or that he was a good actor, but that show was hugely popular and he was this big breakout character that they had spotlighted more and more as that show went on, I think. So it made sense that they wanted someone like that. And it also made sense that he was in such high demand and the producers of that show didn't want to let their, golden boy leave and lose the, selling point for why people were watching Family Ties. But it's good that it worked out. I mean, it sucks for Eric Stoltz, but it's good that this worked out because obviously he was right for this part. And I'm sure that combination helped make this movie a hit. It did help make Michael J. Fox into an even bigger star. But it's crazy. If you watch the documentary, Still, a Michael J. Fox movie, which is great, he talks there about how because he still had to do Family Ties. He was shooting Family Ties during the day and then going and shooting Back to the Future in like the afternoon and evening every single day and like barely sleeping. It's insane that he was able to pull this off and give a good performance here when he would have been so run thin and exhausted.
Right, like his drivers carrying him to bed every night. And you would think, in the 80s, the stories you hear about that are like, oh, I'm Robert Downey Jr. doing Less Than Zero. I guess I'll be on cocaine and stay up all night, or whatever, or just do heroin and shoot this raggedy. But I don't think that was the case with Alex P. Keaton. Although Dave wants to dispute the reason for watching Family Ties. He's a big Tina Yothers fan, Josh. Big Tina Yothers fan.
I mean, she's fine.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Big Tina Yothers fan, Josh.
Thanks for emphasizing
posters on the wall.
That. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure some people had those.
Tina Yothers posters? I don't even remember her name.
Why not?
I remember Mallory and Nick and Alex, but I don't remember the Tina Yothers character name. Do you?
I don't know. Yeah, I wasn't really, I think I watched a little of it, but I wasn't like a super devoted fan of Family Ties, so I don't remember the characters' names other than Alex P. Keaton, in part possibly because of that LFO song. But anyway, that's not the thing. But I think you're right that Michael J. Fox was not on a bunch of drugs in order to do this, or in general. I mean, he wasn't one of these self-destructive young stars, that he just had this work ethic, or that he really wanted this opportunity and he thought, it's whatever it takes, I got to star in this movie. And he was probably right about that, but it sounds like a very unpleasant experience.
They didn't even give him the script the first time. So like, screw you, Family Ties producers. That's not nice. But Josh, you mentioned that they got rejected by more than 40 different financiers, studios, because they didn't think it was raunchy, like the sex teen comedies of the 80s, the Porkies and, the Up the Rivers, Up the Creeks, all that. Hot Dog the movie, perhaps, Josh,
Yeah, perhaps.
But it's interesting because it gives me hope.
That's good. I'm glad.
I have to make a checklist. I'm sure I've been rejected about 40 times on stuff. Maybe my time's coming here. So,
yeah, I mean, 5 years from the point where they started working on this to the point where they actually got to make the movie. And obviously, Steven Spielberg is a huge factor, him standing by them. And when he then started his own production company, Amblin, he remembered this script and this project and brought them on board. So it helps to have an ally like Steven Spielberg. But yeah, also they stuck with this project that they clearly believed in, and it certainly worked out for them. So I looked online and I saw there's some like very brief clips of Eric Stoltz with no dialogue in them. And I'd love to hear the dialogue and see how that all worked. Just because it's an interesting like alternate world.
They said he was like playing it as a drama. There was no levity to it. So I think it was just they cast him after Mask, which is a drama. So
yes,
it just seems like a bad fit. But we like Eric Stoltz. He's a good actor. So you got a favorite? Eric Stoltz movie, Josh?
I don't know. Mr. Jealousy, I do like Noah Baumbach, although that's not my favorite.
You're missing the two big ones, Josh, for us. Pulp Fiction, but more importantly,
of course,
Kicking and Screaming, Noah Baumbach. It's got to be the answer.
Oh, right. He's in that one too. Yeah. Well, he's the star of Mr. Jealousy, but I do like Kicking and Screaming better. So, I just kind of went blank. I kept thinking of The Fly 2, which is definitely not the best Eric Stoltz movie.
Mr. Jealousy is the one that Baumbach disowned, right?
No, that's Highball is the one he disowned. So, no, Mr. Jealousy is
that a Baumbach
it's not his
movie
best.
Too? Is that when he was doing mainstream stuff?
Yeah, it was kind of a semi attempt to make a mainstream comedy with Eric Stoltz.
I have a vague memory of Eric Stoltz and a love interest whistling, like doing a whistle to each other.
That could be. And he's like in a support crew. It's been a while since I saw it, but I felt like Baumbach was a safe choice for me. So it's interesting to see, what you're talking about with Stoltz doing it like too seriously. And you can't hear the dialogue in those clips, but they've dressed him differently. Like Michael J. Fox has that puffy jacket that they make a bunch of jokes about that they must have written later because he's not wearing that. Instead, he's in like all black. And it seems like they styled him to be more serious, which is not his choice necessarily. That's a filmmaking choice. So I wonder if it was just a whole rethink of the approach. And that involved also switching out the actor.
I'll tell you who that's a good thing for. Japanese wrestling legend Kushida from the Time Splitters, because he wore that puffy vest and did the whole Marty McFly gimmick as a wrestler.
That's good. Yeah, the puffy vest is a key element of this movie. I feel like, it's a part of Marty's signature look. If you buy like a Marty McFly action figure, I bet he's wearing that puffy vest.
Do you have any? I don't think I ever had any Back to the Future toys. Did you?
No, I didn't. I mean, like I said, I definitely watched this movie as a kid. I didn't see it in a theater. I think, I was too young for that, but I certainly watched it at home a number of times. And one of the things I remembered, like looking this up, is that, at the end of the movie where it has that sort of faux cliffhanger, and in the home video release of it, they put a big "to be continued" at the end because they were trying to tease the sequel, which isn't in the original version. And I definitely remember seeing that when I watched this movie. So I'm sure I watched it on like VHS or whatever. And I'm pretty sure I also watched the Back to the Future animated series, which was in the early 90s. And to me, the big thing that I loved was the soundtrack. And the Back to the Future soundtrack was one of the first. I remember my mom got me like a cassette Walkman and 3 cassettes. And that was the first popular music that I ever owned. And one of those was the Back to the Future soundtrack. So that was something I listened to, those Huey Lewis songs.
And you could tell
more than watching the movie.
And you can tell it has an influence on you because nobody understands the power of love more than you do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So true. So were you a big viewer of this as a kid?
I think I also I remember seeing Back to the Future 3 in theaters, and that's probably when I kind of started with that, because I was young and everything. And then, you go back and you watch it. And I showed the movie to Scarlett last year for the first time, and we both enjoyed it. So, but I do know that we had someone in our neighborhood who had a DeLorean, and they always had like a cloth, like a car cloth over it. And we were always like walking by the house to see if like the cloth might be off that day or something like that. So, but yeah, it was ubiquitous. Like, I mean, I think as much as any movie of our childhood, Back to the Future was referenced and all around us in culture.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure. Like, I can't even remember a specific instance, but I'm sure I watched it on TV. I'm sure I rented it. I probably watched it at like a sleepover and things like that. It just was something that everybody loved. And so it was always.
Have you ever seen?
It was always around.
I had an ex who loved Huey Lewis, who like saw Huey Lewis like 7 times in concert, which is a lot of times to see Huey Lewis.
Yeah, overall, I've not been like a huge Huey Lewis fan. I just loved those songs. Even as a kid, when I loved that soundtrack and I listened to those over and over again, I never got another Huey Lewis album. That was it. It was just those 2 songs I really liked.
Gotta get
No,
sports.
I never did. And like those tape, when I got that Walkman and those cassettes, the other cassettes I got were Guns N' Roses and Weird Al, who I, went all in on listening to all their music. But for whatever reason, Huey Lewis, I was just like, no, I'm good. These are the 2 Huey Lewis songs. There are no more.
Which is so weird because you could pick 10 more that really fit into those same style of songs. Like, he made a bunch of songs like Harder Rock and Roll fits right in there, right? Like, there's plenty of Huey Lewis songs that fit that kind of feeling, Josh. Maybe we got to get you more Huey Lewis albums this year.
I do know those. I don't have that cassette anymore, but I'm kind of, neutral on Huey Lewis now. Like, those are good songs. He's had a lot of good hits, and these are two of them. But I don't know why I never cared more to find out at the time when I was a little kid. So, Dave, were you a Back to the Future fan as a kid?
Absolutely. I love them. I don't remember if I saw this one in the theater or not, but I do remember the second one being my favorite as a kid. And I rewatched all three of them this past week, and I was a dumb kid. But I also played the Nintendo game, which is famously one of the worst Nintendo games of all time.
Mm. Oh, all right. Yeah. Did you enjoy it as a kid because you were a dumb kid?
I probably loved it. So
yeah. I rewatched the second one coming into this, and like I really thought the first half of the Back to the Future 2 was terrible. And then when they get back to like the meat and bones of going back to 1955, it was brilliant. It was very strange to like think a movie's so bad in one half and then think a movie's so good in another half.
I think that's pretty fair. Yeah.
And they're pushed to make that sequel because of the success and not because they had, a brilliant plan necessarily.
And they were definitely, I think they had already greenlit part 3 because they're already building all those things for part 3 there.
Right. Yeah. Part 2 and part 3, there was, they were early pioneers of the Lord of the Rings model. They were shot back to back. But to make a sequel in the first place, it was because the first one had been so successful, not because they had planned. That to be continued that they added at the end was not something that Zemeckis and Gale had thought of at the time. So, but the studio really wanted that.
And by the way, I think it says to be concluded at the end of the second one.
There you go. Yeah. But I mean, I think as a kid watching it and seeing that to be continued, I probably assumed that it had always been planned this way. And I'm sure other people did as well, but that was not.
Well, perhaps in the iteration we saw originally, it wasn't. But then future Zemeckis came back to Zemeckis and said, hey, man, put a to be continued in this because like Biff in Back to the Future 2, you're about to get really rich, fella.
Yes, he is. So, I mean, not only was this a success box office wise and with audiences, it got an A from CinemaScore, the audience polling service, but critics were generally quite into this as well. It got 2 thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert, and Siskel especially was gushing over this, said that if he ever were to make a movie in Hollywood, like this is the kind of movie he hopes that he would be able to make. And so they were very, very positive about it. In his written review, Roger Ebert said, because the movie has so much fun with the paradoxes and predicaments of a kid meeting his own parents, I won't discuss the plot in any detail. I won't even get into the horrifying moment when Marty discovers his mother, quote, has the hots for him. The movie's surprises are one of its great pleasures. Back to the Future was directed by Robert Zemeckis, who shows not only a fine comic touch, but also some of the lighthearted humanism of Frank Capra. The movie, in fact, resembles Capra's It's a Wonderful Life more than other conventional time travel movies. It's about a character who begins with one view of his life and reality and is allowed, through magical intervention, to discover another.
I immediately think of the John Mulaney bit about Back to the Future when you talk about that. Have you guys ever heard that bit?
I don't remember.
Maybe.
It's a very famous joke he did about the guys going in to pitch Back to the Future. And he's like, so he goes back and they're like, oh, that's brilliant. Does he try to stop the Kennedy assassination? Does he stop World War II? Well, we were going to have his mother try to fuck him or something along those lines. So, all right. That's one way to go about it, but it's very funny. You guys should watch it. He's good. That John Mulaney.
He is good. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. Like, it's interesting that, Jason, I know you love It's a Wonderful Life. Did you see similarities here?
I guess that kind of like small town America and the values and everything, but I didn't compare it to, I understand what he's saying. It's like you're looking at your life through a different lens, right? Type thing. But
right.
Yeah, I didn't take that from this. No.
Yeah, I didn't really either because it's not, I mean, I guess there's a tiny bit of Marty thinking, oh, his parents are dumb losers. And then he goes back in time and he realizes, oh, my mom was horny and my dad wrote sci-fi stories. And now that I think they're cool. But that's not really the main point of the movie. And it's not like he gets back. In a way, it's the opposite because It's a Wonderful Life is all about appreciating what you have. And in Back to the Future, he gets back and he doesn't like learn to appreciate what he has because of his intervention. He makes things all like super great and wonderful, And so he in fact is vindicated in thinking that his parents were losers and he has improved their lives. So in a way, it's not like that at all.
Josh, have any family members of yours tried to sleep with you?
No, they have not. And not that I would say if they had, certainly, but that has not happened. I hope none of us have had that kind of experience, because that would.
Sometimes it's nice to feel wanted, Josh.
All right, let's move on. Janet Maslin in the New York Times said, in less resourceful hands, the idea might quickly have worn thin. It might have taken an uncomfortable turn, since the story's young hero must face the transformation of his plump, stern, middle-aged mother into a flirtatious young beauty. But Mr. Zemeckis is able to keep the story moving and to keep it from going too far. He handles Back to the Future with the kind of inventiveness that indicates he will be spinning funny, whimsical, tall tales for a long time to come. One of the most appealing things about Back to the Future is its way of putting nostalgia gently in perspective. Like Marty, Mr. Zemeckis takes a bemused but unsentimental view of times gone by. And he seems no less fascinated by the future, which is understandable. His own looks very bright.
So bright, he's got to wear shades, Josh.
Yes. I don't know what year that song
probably
came out,
86
but it was probably around this time.
But yeah, it's interesting. You have to think about Zemeckis when you watch this movie, right? And I think you and I were talking about this, because when I watch this, I'm looking at we did Death Becomes Her, and I'm like, man, he got so lost in the wrong things. Because I feel like most of these effects still look really cool to me. If they're not perfect, that's fine. They're practical, they're unique, it gives it a feel. And he gets so wrapped up in the technology going forward, it's almost like he lost the storytelling aspects of his work. We've covered Forrest Gump, which I liked and you hated, but it's just I don't know what happened to him, man. I miss this Robert Zemeckis.
Yeah, I mean, we have definitely talked about this, and I feel like this is the common narrative about Zemeckis' career, and maybe we'll get into it more later. But yeah, I mean, this is a movie where the special effects do look good, and it's interesting because they had to rush through some of the post-production on this movie to get it out into theaters when it was planned to be. And so, some of these effects were not as polished as they would have wanted them to be, but I don't think that, you don't really notice that now. Everything looks pretty seamless. I think it looks good, and, the practical aspects, the fact that you have this DeLorean, I feel like you make this movie now or whatever, the time machine would probably just be entirely like some CGI effect, and it wouldn't even be a real thing. They wouldn't have taken a real car and retrofitted it or anything like that. But it works so much better because it's tactile like that.
It's realistic. So, it's fun,
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it just bores me when I see we just talked about this in our bonus episode in 1971 with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, how misguided Tim Burton's remake was to use all that CGI instead of building out, which we know he was capable of. And I feel that way about Zemeckis too. I'm not against the pushing of technology, but all this stuff gives you a more lived-in feel to it, and that really works for the movie. Yes, it was all shot on a backlot, but it feels like 1950s America.
Yeah, or like a conception of 1950s America that people had in 1985.
Yeah, a very Norman Rockwell painting style America.
Yeah. So mostly there was positive reviews, but I wanted to get a slightly less positive take. So Sheila Benson in the Los Angeles Times said, "Strange how scale is occasionally everything in a movie. If Back to the Future had been about the size of, say, Repo Man, it might have been one of those appealing films that begs to be adopted. It's not. It's big, cartoonish, and empty, with an interesting premise that is underdeveloped and overproduced. You might hope from the opening that we're in for another Buckaroo Banzai, a movie crammed with so much visual and verbal invention and character detail that it almost bursts. No such luck. There aren't enough bits of lovely inventiveness to pad out the gimmick that McFly is accidentally sent back 30 years in the professor's time warp car, a plutonium-powered DeLorean."
Have you ever seen Buckaroo Banzai?
I have, although it's been a while, and I remember being a little let down because it has this crazy reputation and it's such a cult favorite.
Right.
And it seemed like something I would love, and I think I was kind of neutral on it, but it's been a while. I don't remember it very well.
I know that's a big thing, is that it's a big cult favorite, but it is, I don't know. I mean, I don't think the movie would have worked if you didn't invest in the characters. So, I start there with this and just, I think she's wrong all the way through based on that. The DeLorean at first was a refrigerator at some point,
Yeah.
And when I did my TV show for ABC, The Time Machine Chefs, they made the time machine a refrigerator, and those producers were fucking morons. So there you go.
Well, it makes sense for a cooking show. You don't want a DeLorean for that.
I know the test audiences hated it, but those producers sucked all the way through. So
that critic would love the sequel, because that's exactly what she gets in part 2.
Yeah, I mean, but I think, she mentions Repo Man and Buckaroo Banzai, which are both really like weird, idiosyncratic movie. Like,
that's what
this was a big studio production. I don't think it was going to come out that way anyway. Yeah. So, that's she's asking for like a movie that this was never going to be.
I think that's a little unfair, because while it's not that wild and insane, it's still original. It's still cool and unique, right? So
right, but I think she's you talk about those other movies, they're so bizarre. And so again, they're like these weird, like out there visions. I don't think Zemeckis is capable of that. I mean, as we're talking about him, like he's this kind of, he's a nerd filmmaker in the sense of like the technology, and he's not a nerd filmmaker in the sense of being into like esoteric, crazy narrative experimentation. I just don't think that that's the kind of movie that he would make.
Yeah,
he wouldn't make Repo Man, and he wouldn't make
But we've seen that from George Lucas from the beginning, that kind of sci-fi, technologically experimental film. We'd seen Spielberg do Duel, which is a big, kind of epic battle for TV. You wouldn't get that Zemeckis is going this way from Used Cars.
Well, I haven't seen Used Cars, but I mean, I think the trajectory of his career doesn't indicate to me that he's going to make some sort of weird outsider project, but maybe he's got that in him. I don't know. So anything else you want to say about the background of this film, Jason?
The background of Back to the Future, Josh. In the original draft, 1985 becomes more futuristic. The time machine, which is a fridge, is powered by Coke. The dad, George McFly, becomes a boxer because of the knockout on Biff. And Einstein, the dog, who Christopher Lloyd calls Einie constantly in the second one, was originally a chimp.
Well, those are all bad ideas.
Well, they moved them.
I'm glad they didn't use any of them.
Two other things. Yeah. Sid Sheinberg, the legendary studio exec, wanted to change the title because he didn't think it was a good title to Spaceman from Pluto, which certainly fits the one tiny reference in there, And
right,
Josh, we're talking about just what a juggernaut of money this was. In May 22nd, 1986, it was released on VHS for $79.95, became the first film to sell 450,000 units at that price point. Most rented video cassette of 86.
Yeah, that was mostly not, I think, people buying it for their homes, but the way that like stuff worked was that those were video stores buying it to rent it. Yeah, that's why it was so expensive.
Well, but it's still the most rented, video of the year. And that's Josh. People are renting.
Right, that is, but people aren't laying out $80 for it necessarily. But no, I mean, I think like, again, because we probably all saw it that way. That was what you went to the video store and you rented Back to the Future. And it was something, and Siskel says this in the Siskel and Ebert segment. He's, saying that he hopes that people aren't turned off because they think this is a movie for teens or whatever. Like, he's like, this is a movie I could show to anyone. And I think that was true. You could watch this as a kid, you could watch this as a teen, and adults could watch it and enjoy it too. And so this was like a safe movie that you could rent at any kind of get together, no matter who was
4 quadrants, my guy.
Indeed. So we'll come back and talk some more of our general thoughts on Back to the Future. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this premiere of our season on the films of 1985, we're talking about box office champion Back to the Future. And Jason, you mentioned watching this with your daughter, and we were just saying about how this is a 4-quadrant film. Is this a generationally like something you can pass on. You feel like this is appreciated by the younger folks.
I do think the kids like it, Josh. Hey, kids, you like the film. You like the TikToks about the future. I mean, some of it is that I think the musical now has pierced through pop culture, and a lot of kids want to go see the musical with the DeLorean on stage and everything. But it is, I mean, the jokes are tight. They're funny. There's a lot of good characters, and it's a real adventure. One thing Zemeckis is very good at is constantly throwing obstacles against Marty, to accomplish his task, which I think in the second film gets a little like, okay, now he has to hide again, so his mom doesn't see him while she sees him, that type of thing. But in the first one, I think, usually draft after draft after draft, you might get diminishing returns, but maybe having Spielberg help kind of helm this thing worked. But yeah, this works for everybody, Josh. It's a good, clean American fun about a mom trying to fuck his kid, her kid. So,
exactly. Yeah, I think I don't remember exactly when the last time was that I saw this. It probably was at some point as an adult, although I'm not entirely sure. But I definitely didn't remember how much of the story was about Lorraine wanting to fuck Marty. That I was like, oh, this is a story about how he gets stuck in the past and they have to figure out how to fix the DeLorean and get him back to the future, which is the core to me of the movie and like what's interesting and fun about it. And the relationship between Marty and Doc. Christopher Lloyd is great as the sort of mad scientist who's also really Marty's best friend, right? I mean, we don't ever see Marty having any other like friends per se.
He's got a girlfriend he's going to take up to the lake.
He's got the girlfriend, yeah. But, and he does have those bandmates who I don't know that they even had any lines.
The Pinheads, Josh? Pinheads?
Yeah, the Pinheads. Yeah. They try to audition for the Battle of the Bands. But I mean, clearly Doc is like his best friend and someone he cares about. And there's, a big emotional arc of that is him wanting to be able to tell Doc that, oh, in the future, you're going to get murdered by these terrorists and I want to try to protect you. And all that stuff I was invested in again, and I really like, but it's overshadowed really by all the stuff with his mom and trying to get the parents together, which at least this time for me, I was like not interested in at all. And I don't find all of that like, uh-oh, my mom wants to make out with me. Like, I don't find that humor funny. So that was kind of my thing this time. No.
Dave, what do you think about that crass humor?
I gotta say, I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, people seem to think that. And it's interesting that, I mean, despite that kind of subject matter, which you think, Jason, like in that John Mulaney joke, right? If someone was pitching this now and that was their hook, and that was their initial hook, I think, you look at them talking about when they came up with this idea in 1980, and they didn't really have all of the time travel mad scientist stuff down. The idea came from, what if this guy travels back in time and his mom wants to fuck him? That was the whole initial idea of the movie. And I just like the acting is good and Lea Thompson is good. And she's got a tough role to play where she has to be all horny, but you don't want them to cross a certain line. And she does fine with that. But I just didn't find it. It's not that it was crass, like, oh, this is wrong. Like, I just didn't find it funny.
I think Lea Thompson is good as young Lorraine. I don't really think the aging up of that. I mean, Crispin Glover's so weird, he can kind of get away with it, but like, and especially in the second one, when they're in the future and everything, it's like these characters that they're creating are so cartoonish and overacted. Like, it really takes you out of it. The best stuff is when they're back in time, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I thought in this movie, and I didn't rewatch the second or third ones this time, but I saw them a long time ago and I don't really remember a ton about them. But I thought the aging up in this movie was decent. I mean, for the time period, for what they were able to do in 1985 with makeup, I think they didn't overdo
I didn't mind that. I'm talking performances.
On the performances, I thought were fine too. I mean, Crispin Glover, like you said, he's so weird that like he's basically just giving the same performance no matter what age George McFly is. And it works because you get the sense that this guy is just a weirdo and he's always been this kind of weirdo. Lea Thompson, maybe she overdoes the little like shaky mom voice in the 80s, but not too much. And I remember also as a kid, weirdly, I think this was the first time I ever saw Lea Thompson in a movie. And I think despite the whole sequence where she's a teenager, I think I always, for a long time, had the sense that she was actually an older person. So, it worked.
Well, I can see that only because, when you think of the teen stars of that day, she's always mature, right? She's the mature friend. She's always like the square peg friend, I think, and everything. Even when she's the fun girl, she's still like the kind of intellectual of the group, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was more just like I didn't see those. I didn't see Some Kind of Wonderful, I'm sure, until I was an adult. And I didn't watch John Hughes movies as a kid. I didn't watch those until I was in college or later. That wasn't my thing when I was a kid. So I didn't see her in a lot of those things that she did at the same time. I just saw Back to the Future movies. So that was what I knew her for.
What about Biff, Josh? She's a great villain in this one, and it just falls off going forward.
Yeah, he is a great villain. I mean, he's so mean. I mean, right? He's just like an asshole to everybody. He's a rapist, probably. And it works because Thomas F. Wilson, who plays that part, just really goes for it. And you really, really hate Biff. And that's a very clear rooting interest. And you want to see him, he gets kind of humiliated there at the end when they change the future. And they're able to like almost bully him back in a way because he's now this sort of sycophantic car detailer guy who's waxing all their cars now that the McFly family is so successful. Although at least he does have his own like car detailing business, so he's probably still doing okay.
Well, isn't George his boss? Well, I mean, in a way,
well, no, I don't think George.
Yeah, that makes
right.
sense.
He's a client. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Thomas Wilson, comedian. I've met him. I think at Life is Beautiful back in the day. He's a lovely guy. So he embraces all this, and now I don't know about back then.
Right.
But yeah, I know. He's hateable, and even without the potential rapes, hateable, Josh.
Right. Oh yeah. From the moment he's there, because the first time we see him is when Marty comes home and he's berating George because he's George's boss and telling him to do all this work. And he's, George has loaned him their car and Biff has totaled the car and he's blaming George for it. I mean, it's just really over the top villainy,
Biff.
even more. Right.
Hey, what do you think? I was thinking about Gremlins and I was thinking about this and it's interesting. And the mom, Lorraine's mom is the mom in Gremlins also. But I love, like I'm talking about, I know these are like artifices, but I think they did such a good job of like building these towns. Like they feel like places you would want to be.
Right. I mean, it definitely has, like you were saying, that Norman Rockwell feel. I mean, this was shot on the Universal backlot and it's a very famous, like you can watch tons of other movies and say, oh, there's the clock tower because so many movies were shot here and you can go take the tour and see it. But it does have that sense. I mean, I think that's what they want, is to build this archetypal American small town in the 50s. And it's also an archetypal American town in the 80s with the mall where they go initially to test the DeLorean. I mean, that's a very 80s thing. So yeah, I think they do a good job. I do love the name of the town being Hill Valley, which is a ridiculous oxymoron that makes no sense if you think about it for 2 seconds. But it just sounds like the name of an all-American town until you reflect on it briefly. So I do think, there's other reviews that say, oh, this nostalgizes the 50s too much or idealizes it. But I don't think so. I mean, they make it clear that like the black waiter at the diner or busboy at the diner who's going to later become the mayor, but at the time, he doesn't have opportunities and things like that. Like they're not trying to sugarcoat it, but this isn't like a social justice movie or anything like that. This isn't about.
Well, Josh, I'm glad you brought this up because I marked down these 2 points that when we were talking earlier this week, you wanted me to make sure I gave you the opportunity to discuss. One, you said this was, and I quote, the most accurate portrayal of Libyans you've ever seen in film.
Yeah. That was, it's interesting because now we don't even think of, I mean, obviously Libya is still a country, but Libyans aren't the sort of terrorist threat that you would stereotype in a movie if you made it now for Middle Eastern terrorists, but it was a big thing. And there were some people at the time who thought that it was insensitive. I will say the Libyans don't show up for enough time to really like go super egregious with the stereotypes, but yeah, I mean, the guy's got a turban and they want a bomb and they shoot with a machine. It's not great.
Oh yeah, the bazookas and everything, the rocket launchers.
Yeah,
but
rocket launcher,
Josh,
yeah.
I know you were happy that this movie made the point that Chuck Berry stole rock and roll from white people.
Right.
That was a big thing for you. That it was out there that it was white people who created that sound, and it was Chuck Berry who stole it. So.
Honestly, that whole scene was another thing, and it's so famous, that scene. And it's not just that element, which is a little uncomfortable, but I mean, they play it off as kind of like jokey.
In the 80s,
it's just
I could see that as
scene.
a joke, like without even considering the racial implications, right? So.
Yeah. But I mean, it was interesting to read that like at one time Zemeckis thought about cutting that scene and left it in because test audiences loved it so much. And to me, it was so superfluous and so indulgent and not like very funny or anything like that, just for that wind up of a joke. And the one thing, although they do a good job with showing that the future mayor, but a band made of black musicians would not be playing a high school dance for white kids in 1955.
That's interesting. I didn't even think about that. So, but.
Yeah, I saw that mentioned somewhere else. I can't take credit for that observation, but it seems correct.
But you are right that scene is in pop culture lore at this point in time. And maybe people just wanted to see Michael J. Fox shred on the guitar or something, Josh.
They did. I'm sure they did. And, he learned how to mimic that very well. And
the whole thing.
Right. All of that. And I was wondering, like, as I watched the movie, I was thinking, okay, well, that's definitely not him singing. I wonder who's singing. And in the credits of the movie, even, it says performed by Marty McFly. Like they didn't want anyone to know that someone else sang it. And the actual singer, I forget his name, but I think he had to
It's Mark Campbell from Jack Mack and the Heart Attack.
And he had to I don't know if it was Bob Gale or Spielberg or one of the producers had to put some special thing in so that he could get like a residual on that because he wasn't credited. It just seems kind of shitty.
Yeah, right. I think they gave him you're right. They gave him some special compensation credit there. And Eddie Van Halen played the guitar riff that wakes up George when he's in the Spaceman from Pluto outfit.
Right. And you can see the cassette that Marty plays says like Eddie or Edward Van Halen on it. So they're definitely trying to make that connection. And I don't know that scene. I mean, the movie doesn't necessarily feel long, but I think it would have been fine to leave the Johnny B. Good scene out.
I agree with you from a storytelling standpoint. You could have done that, but like we said, the results are in, buddy, and it's the popular choice.
Right. No, people love it. And I think and I like this movie. I just think that I didn't love it. I thought, oh, maybe this is something that I really loved as a kid. And especially given that people generally love it and the response from both of you guys who I think watched it before me this time and clearly were really, really into it. I thought, oh, maybe I'm going to just love this. And the opening scene, we haven't talked about this, but the opening shot, which is like mostly this sort of one take pan across Doc Brown's crazy like bedroom with all these clocks and these contraptions and the automatic movements that are going on to like feed the dog and make his coffee but don't work properly because he's not there. And it conveys so much. You see Marty come in, we hear about the Libyans, we see the plutonium. It's like so well constructed and so visually inventive. Watching that shot, I was like, oh man, I am going to love this. It's like, I'm just going to be so into this movie this whole time. And it was mixed for me, but that shot is great.
Clocks.
Thank you for that. So, Dave, thoughts?
Well, back to the Johnny B. Good scene. I think without that scene, you don't get Marty McFly as this character that everybody loves throughout the rest of the 80s and forever after that. I think it's a big part of his character building.
That's true. Also, Marty is a dumbass.
Oh, sure.
I think I didn't remember that Marty just screws things up completely for no reason.
He's a teenager. Come on,
yeah,
Josh.
He's a dumb teenager, and I think maybe that's part of the point. But I didn't when I was a dumb teenager or a dumb kid. I didn't get that.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing I was going to say is, I mean, we said it when we were introducing the season of 85 as being like, the heart of the 1980s. I mean, this is as entertaining as 1980s gets. Like, this is it. And like, anytime you see nostalgia for the 80s, I feel like this movie is the center of that.
And to go back to something within that opening shot. We haven't even talked about Christopher Lloyd and the Doc Brown performance, which is iconic. And as I said, oh, Marty.
Yeah, he's fantastic. Better. I mean, I like him more here than I like Michael J. Fox, and I like Doc Brown as a character more than Marty, and that's why I think I wanted to see more of their interactions and less of the "my mom is hot for me, I got to get my parents together" stuff, because I thought that was what was fun the most about the movie. And there is one, I watched the deleted scenes on the Blu-ray that I have, and there's one scene where it's mentioned briefly at the beginning that because Doc was originally planning to take the time machine into the future himself, he has like his own suitcase in it, and Marty takes that with him back into 1955. And so 1955 Doc is looking through his future self's like personal belongings, and he finds a Playboy, and he's like looking at the naked ladies in the Playboy, and he's like, oh, the future is great, or something like that. And I wanted more of like, what is this weird guy doing?
Yeah. But what about when he comes back at the end? Imagine if those were the outfits from the future when he comes back. Yeah. It's weird.
The transparent like plastic tie that he's wearing, and those sunglasses,
shiny, silk kind of. It just looks like he's in an opening band at a Prince concert or something.
Right. And I think that's the aesthetic that carries over to the movie. But should we talk about the ending? Because I love the ending so much. And I think one of the reasons maybe that Back to the Future 2 is disappointing is because the possibility of what could happen based on, suddenly Doc Brown comes back and he's wearing these crazy future clothes and he's got Mr. Fusion and the DeLorean flies and he says, Marty, it's your kids. And I don't remember now what exactly it was about the kids that they have to deal with in Back to the Future 2, but I do remember watching Back to the Future 2 at the time and thinking, this is what Doc was concerned about. This is why they have to go into the future to deal with the kids. So I think that ending works so beautifully because there's no sequel. And then when there is a sequel, it almost retroactively makes the ending worse.
Yeah, because that ending, when they explain what happens in the second one, is kind of boring.
Right. That's what I remember, the boringness of it rather than exactly what it was. But that the urgency with which Doc arrives, he's like, you're kids, we've got to go right now. And then it's like, this was not urgent at all. We did not need to run into the future for this, I think.
Yeah, I would agree, Josh. I would agree. But if you have a time machine, why wouldn't you use it all the time?
Well, right. I mean, and obviously the reason that Doc goes into the future to begin with is just because like he thinks it would be cool. And
it is.
And it is. But instead of coming back at the end and saying, hey, Marty, the future is awesome, why don't you come hang out with me? He's like, oh, there's a crisis, we have to go now, which is great as the ending of the movie, but does not work then as the setup for the second movie, or they didn't come up with a way that it could.
Do you think it's a little weird that he's like, there's a crisis, we have to go right now, this is the most important thing in the world, and Marty's like, but we don't have enough space on the road, which clearly they do. It's a wide open space. And then he just like is like, hey, even though I told you your whole family's fucked up, I'm gonna just flex right now. Roads? Where we're going, we don't need any roads. Well, I mean, here's a surprise while your kid's in jail, Marty.
That's what he was going to do anyway, right? In order to get there. But yeah, we literally just saw like one scene earlier, Doc driving down that road and getting fast enough to use the time machine. So, but that's a great line. It gives them the chance to do that line. And that's what's so cool about that ending, where you're like, holy shit, the DeLorean flies. It's awesome. And then it's not as awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Should we rate this out of five DeLoreans?
Sure. 5, why not flux capacitors, Josh? Let's be a little more.
Sure, 5 flux capacitors. Let's do it.
It gets 4 from me. Popcorn movie 80s greatness.
I give it 3.5. I do like it, but maybe not as much as I did when I was 10. And it's fun. It certainly is, as we keep saying, it's like a quintessential 80s movie. If you want to be introduced to the mainstream pop culture of the 80s, this is a good way to do it. So I still like it. 3.5. Flux capacitors for me. Dave, how do you rate it?
I'm going 5. I don't see how you can watch this movie and not have a great time.
Well, I didn't. But
we had a good time.
I'm glad that we're starting off the season with the first of perhaps multiple 5 flux capacitor ratings from Dave.
Oh, yeah.
So that is awesome. We'll come back and talk about the legacy of Back to the Future. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this premiere of our season on the films of 1985, we have been talking about Back to the Future, and we've really talked a lot already about the sequels, and especially part 2. Jason, you rewatched that, and we're not a fan.
I was a big fan of the second half. I was shocked at how boring the first half was, but once the juice got juiced, it was good. It's just all the stuff that they do in the future. Like I said, like Thomas Wilson, his characteristic of his grandson is just terrible. Like I wouldn't even think a human would act like that. Michael J. Fox, who we love, playing his son, it's, well, my voice is squeakier, so I'm a different guy. Like there's just nothing. And then, everyone is just overacting, and the focus is all wrong. It comes in a crisp, clear, Zemeckis kind of precision in the second half, but the first half is a mess.
Yeah, again, I remember only certain details. I mean, some things that were like predictions that people come out. I mean, the Biff Tannen, casino or whatever, his sort of Trump-like aspect. You see that a lot these days. Yeah, whatever it's called. And when Marty goes to see Jaws 15 or something, the joke about all the sequels and those things I remember. And I do remember that the whole plot hinges on like Biff getting a sports almanac so that he can make sports bets. And it just seems like such a non-interesting thing to hinge your story on.
Well, he does murder George McFly too.
Okay. Yeah. See, I forgot about that part. But the reason he becomes powerful is because he gets that sports almanac.
He has all the answers to who won all the games. So he bets and he becomes rich, and then he invests in bad guy companies and becomes richer and murders George, and then, takes Elaine. And, but it's also, the brother and the sister aren't in the sequel at all. Like they must have had to deal with Biff as a stepdad too.
Yeah. I had forgotten that Marty even had siblings when I was watching this film, but, yeah. And also there's such a perfect arc for defeating Biff in the first movie that you don't want to like undo it, but that's obviously what you have to do with these sequels. So Dave, you watched 2 and 3 this week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, 2 didn't like hold up as much, although I did like it. Like it still got a lot of really fun moments to it, especially in the second half, like Jason said. The third one I didn't like at the time when it came out, and I still not that into it, although part of that is the Western vibe. Like it just doesn't do that much for me. And they're apart too much, Marty and Doc. Whenever they're together, there's still some fun in there, but they're apart way too much, and that really kind of hurts it. But yeah, it was fun just revisiting the whole series. I hadn't seen any of them in, God, like 25, 30 years.
Has anyone seen Doc Brown Saves the World, a short film from 2015?
No, I mean, I watched like a clip of it. It was basically a DVD extra, and I think it's just Christopher Lloyd in a room kind of riffing on stuff that was created in 2015 for the release, and it has him having to kind of, in a way, it's weirdly like patching continuity, because they're like, oh, Back to the Future 2 took place in 2015. It had all this futuristic technology that doesn't exist, and so Doc Brown has to now like, prevent the development of that technology and push it into the future so that we can have our real 2015 or something like that. I'm sure Christopher Lloyd is having a good time in it, but it's probably not great. I have not. The version that I have, the Blu-ray that I have, is not that release, so it doesn't have it on there. So I wasn't able to see it other than a brief clip.
The animated TV show feels very much like Sherman and Mr. Peabody. They're going through time, Doc and Marty and everything, and having adventures, but it's intercut with live action segments featuring Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown performing science experiments alongside Bill Nye.
And I love that was what launched Bill Nye's career, like doing those segments on the Back to the Future animated show. Like some executive was like, let's give this guy his own show. So Back to the Future responsible for the career of Bill Nye, the science guy. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I watched that show when I was a kid. I don't remember a lot, but it's interesting that it's focused on the Doc Brown like family that they established in Back to the Future 3. That was what they decided to focus on going forward, not Marty's family, but Doc's family, his kids, and Mary Steenburgen is back to do the voice of Doc's wife, and Thomas Wilson does a voice. They're the only two that do the voices of their original characters. So I'm sure it's not good. I mean, I remember like I watched the Bill and Ted animated series at that time too, and I think my Bill and Ted DVD does have like an episode or two of that, and I watched it at one point recently, and it was not good. So, yeah, I doubt it's very good, but it did last for a couple seasons, and was probably part of my Saturday morning cartoon lineup that I enjoyed.
Did you watch it in your jammies?
I'm sure I did. I loved Saturday morning I was like a Saturday morning cartoon obsessive. I remember like scouring the TV guide for what cartoons were on every week, and the previews of the new season.
Those were always exciting. That the Friday night that they would do like the preview episode of all the new cartoons coming on. That was an exciting time.
Yeah, I loved that stuff. So I'm sure I would have watched it. So Dave, you mentioned you played the video game there. Have there been multiple Back to the Future video games? Right?
There's from the company Telltale, who does a lot of these like PC graphic adventure games. They made an acclaimed Back to the Future game probably around 2015, like you were just saying, like around that time, which I have not played, but I heard is great.
I mean, there's comic books, there's novels, there's pinball machines. We mentioned The Ride, which I'm pretty sure I went on. Jason, you definitely.
I remember it as an early simulator ride, and it was always fun.
Right.
And
yeah.
I mean, it was just all over pop culture.
Yeah. And the musical, have you seen that, Jason?
No.
Did we get it at the Smith
We
Center
did.
here?
I haven't seen it. I know it's popular. I could tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing, Zemeckis and Gale, to their credit, have been adamant about not making another Back to the Future. It's kind of amazing that no one has gone around them, because I'm sure they don't own the property, that no one has gone around them to just do a Back to the Future reboot or legacy sequel or something like that. But there haven't been. But one thing Zemeckis has said is that they would consider making a movie of the musical, which would basically just be a remake. It would be a musical remake, and we'd have new actors as these characters. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I don't know that it's necessary. I mean, obviously it's not necessary, but would it be good? I mean, having not seen the stage production, I don't know. I mean, I think there are some fun. I wrote an article last year or a year or two ago about movies based on musicals, based on movies, and sometimes it does work out and it's kind of fun. But I don't know if this would be the way to go with that.
They'll probably turn it into 2 or 3 movies just so they could stretch it out.
That too, yeah, like Wicked. Yeah. That's what it'll end up. So a lot of the people involved in this movie we've discussed before. Robert Zemeckis, Jason mentioned Death Becomes Her, and Forrest Gump. We did episodes on both of those. And I'm sure we said at the time, which is still true, he has kind of gone overboard with his obsession with technology, which is often to the detriment of the storytelling in his films. His recent stuff, I haven't seen. Jason, you said you maybe were going to watch Here, but I don't think you ended up doing it.
I didn't. I started prepping our next episode, which I'm very happy that I did.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I'm sure Here is not. I mean, and that's got a lot of de-aging with Tom Hanks, because it's this story that takes place across, decades and of these people's lives. But I did see his Pinocchio remake, which is really, really bad. His next movie, though, is a thriller based on a popular novel. It's a Netflix movie called The Last Mrs. Parrish, a thriller starring Jennifer Lopez. I feel like maybe when he just gets back to the basics, stuff like that, when he did What Lies Beneath or Flight with Denzel Washington, which I'm mixed on, but like that was after years of just doing these awful motion capture movies. When he can just get there and like tell a story with some actors, I feel like he could still be a good craftsman.
I think so. And I was saying, and Dave, Josh was disagreeing with me, but I feel like Here is already being reclaimed by like film Twitter and people like that.
Well, that's interesting. I got to admit, I have not seen anybody trying to reclaim Here. So.
That was what I said. Jason's gonna build up that.
I haven't even seen it. I can't even claim it, let alone reclaim it. So
yeah. Michael J. Fox, we talked about in our episode on The Frighteners. This did certainly launch him into a bigger stardom And he was a big movie star in the 80s with stuff like Teen Wolf, Secret of My Success, Doc Hollywood. He went back into TV with Spin City. And, he's certainly known now for his activism as someone who suffers from Parkinson's disease. But yet his career continues. He's been one of the great things I think he's done as an activist is to just continue to be out there and be like, hey, this is what it looks like to be a person living with a chronic illness. And it doesn't mean that you hide away. I mean, I know he's currently on Shrinking on Apple TV. So he's still working as an actor and just released another memoir that's actually about the making of Back to the Future, which is, an interesting thing to check out.
That's cool. Yeah, we obviously root for him. And his comic timing is as good as it can be, man.
Yeah, and I would absolutely recommend that documentary if you haven't seen it, which has a lot of stuff about Back to the Future in it and is really ingeniously constructed the way that it uses clips from his movies and TV shows to kind of tell the story of his life. So really a good movie.
All right, I haven't seen it, but
yeah, you should check that out.
Christopher Lloyd, I believe we've talked about before, right, Josh?
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Yeah.
I mean, 2 Emmys for, this is what I'm going to say. He's got at least 4 characters that go down as iconic in pop culture history. Jim Ignatowski from Taxi, 2 Emmys there. Uncle Fester. I mean, if you watch Wednesday and you see Fred Armisen's flaccid performance of Uncle Fester, it really shows just what Christopher Lloyd did. Obviously, Doc Brown, and then the bad guy in Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he is 87 years old and still working steadily. I mean, I've seen him recently as Bob Odenkirk's dad in the Nobody movies, where he's clearly having a great time and getting to shoot machine guns and stuff. So, yeah, he's always fun to see, and he is the Uncle Fester, I think, for me, even more than Jackie Coogan from the 60s series. He is the definitive Uncle Fester.
Lea Thompson, huge in the 80s, everything from All the Right Moves to Red Dawn to Howard the Duck. You already mentioned Some Kind of Wonderful. Caroline in the City, kind of a forerunner to Sex in the City on, network, so not as edgy. And now she's a TV director. Good for her.
Yeah, she's done a lot of that. She has directed at least one. I saw a movie she directed called The Year of Spectacular Men with her daughters, Madeline Deutsch, who wrote that movie as well, and Zoe Deutsch, who has eclipsed her mother as a star, certainly.
And we have real fast, and her husband is Harold Deutsch, who directed Pretty in Pink.
Yeah, and so they, both kind of icons of 80s cinema. And speaking of the 80s, we have discussed Lea Thompson before as a co-star in the classic Ping Pong Summer.
That was a good one. Crispin Glover, we've also mentioned. I like River's Edge. Wild at Heart, I know, was on Dave's top first-time watches list last year, right, Dave?
Hell yes, great. Also, I love the Willard remake. It's so good.
Yeah,
he's a fun one too.
He's a weirdo, and I love that. He publishes his own books of poetry and stories, and he has written and directed and starred in 3 films that I've not seen, but part of the reason I haven't seen them is because the only way you can ever see these movies is at an in-person showing with Crispin Glover there. Not just in a theater, but it has to be part of a tour where Crispin Glover presents the movie to the audience. No other way to see these movies. And you got to respect that. For I think his first movie was from 2007 or something. So over the course of almost 20 years, he has refused to do anything like a home video release or streaming. You can only watch these movies if you go hang out with
them. That just feels very on point with the old SNL sketch, Christopher Walken's Psychic Friends Network, where he would just say, Crispin Glover will go to your home. And that was the whole bit, is that they would actually go to the people's houses. Crispin Glover will come to your home. It was just made me laugh.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm glad you got your Walken.
I didn't need to, but some other names that you would recognize. Casey Zemeckis, right, Josh? That's how you pronounce that. Zemeckis.
Sure.
And Billy Zane, all in the Biff's gang there.
Yeah, and Jason Hervey from The Wonder Years plays
he was on fire in this time period. He's in our next movie that we're watching too.
Nice. Jason, you any nice Thomas F. Wilson stories?
Liked him on Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah. He's a comedian, like you said. He's a comedian and a voice actor. a lot nowadays. And, they do a lot of these. I feel like he ends up at, he's one of these actors who's at a lot of fan conventions, right? And like you said, he has a kind of good attitude about being known for being Biff for all these years. And
it's probably paid his bills from, 85 on. Yeah. So
I'm sure that it has, and there's nothing wrong with that. So anything else you want to say about the legacy of this movie?
More movie.
I don't know what that was, but okay.
It's all Doc Brown. He starts every sentence. More.
Yeah. Great Scott.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
good work.
That's not really. Not much of an impression there. But I do love Doc Brown. So that is Back to the Future, and that's this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can check us out online and on social media.
In the present or the future. We're at Awesome Movie.
At any time.
Yeah, awesomemovieyear.com. Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram. Jason Harris Comedy or Jay Harris Comedy and all the things. Go for Jason on Letterboxd.
You can check out some old things from me at joshbellhateseverything.com. I am at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Blue Sky and on Letterboxd. And if you're on Letterboxd and you watch this movie or any of the movies we talk about on the show, tag your review Awesome Movie Year. We would love to know what you think. And check out our producer, David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on social media at Piecing Pod and join the Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about on Piecing It Together and here on Awesome Movie Year.
We always appreciate all the feedback from the lovely Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces members. Jason, what's in our next episode?
Okay, guys, go back to the beginning of this episode when we're talking about how 1985 felt like quintessential 80s, and you can make weird, cool, interesting projects with characters that are so out there. I'm super excited, Josh. I said it on the documentary episode that we just released for Dave, top 5 documentaries of last year. For me, number 1 is Pee-wee as himself. So we are going to a first feature from Mr. Tim Burton, Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
So tune in next time for Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.